GMGM, welcome to another Wormhole Ecosystem Call. Yeah, guys, we're gonna cover the month of July. How was July for you guys?
July was
That was
good.
great.
July was good. Busy as usual. I feel like the team's been very heads down, building a lot of things that we're gonna get a little bit more loud about quite soon. But yeah, it was good. How was it for you, Dan?
It was great. Had yeah, a lot of things that we're going to be able to talk about soon. A lot of things that we're going to talk about on this call. So all good. How about you, Joao?
Hot and busy. Same.
Cool. Yeah, Joe, do you want to start off with a short introduction about yourself? Just for everyone's context, today's special guest is Joao. He works at M0 and he is the Chief Strategy Officer over there.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, as you said, I'm Chief Strategy at M0. I've been with M0 since 2023. M0 is the universal stablecoin platform, as we call it. We'll get into the details of that later on. I've been in the stablecoin sector for a long time. Before M0, I used to be at Circle for 8 years. I led the build out of USDC, led all the stablecoin product teams over there at Circle. So yeah, happy to chat about stablecoins and a few other topics, if at all, with you guys. Thanks for having me again.
Awesome. I feel like, your team must be really in demand right now. Like we see so much demand for stablecoins right now, and like our BD teams stacked. In a previous call, Thomas called M0 like the pump fund for stablecoins, and we predicted this moment. Whereas, when the stablecoin narrative really blows out, M0 is going to be the team that's just going to be in demand everywhere. I wanted to bring you on to talk a little bit about the stablecoin narrative right now, but I do want to start off with the partnership between M0 and Wormhole. I think what's really important that I always have Robinson talk about on these calls is how does a project think about expanding multi-chain? I think what would be really awesome for our community to hear about is how did the team at M0 think about, integrating NTT and then choosing the different chains that you guys wanted to be at?
Yeah, sure. I have quite a lot of experience on this, actually, even before my time at M0, because as I said, while I was at Circle, one of my product teams at Circle was responsible, for example, for bringing USDC over to multiple chains. And actually, I've known Robinson, and we've worked with the Wormhole team from that point onwards as well. And kind of the principle has always been the same at M0. It's still the same. I think a lot of people see stablecoins as this consumer product, right, that people hold in their wallets and they know what it is and they pick their favorite brand, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's a very early stage and kind of niche perspective to things. The way that we see the world is that actually stablecoins are going to be this amazing and programmable infrastructure for dollars on the internet that is way more valuable as a developer platform than actually this asset that people hold. Probably the more likely scenario into the future is that you're going to hold a digital dollar balance in some app and you have no idea how it's implemented behind the scenes, and it's probably going to be implemented by stablecoins. Think about it like that. Then, as I said, a stablecoin is more like a developer platform, and the way that we want to be successful is by serving developers wherever they're building value, right? So we think of ourselves as pretty much chain agnostic as far as a platform, right? We need to be where the developers are. Obviously, we would love to work with the more successful developers, but there's still quite a lot of experimentation going on. And so teams typically come to us, they have a use case, they have something they are interested in building. Some of them are biased in terms of the substrate they want to build on, right? Some of them come and they say, yeah, I'm in the Solana ecosystem, I'm in the Base ecosystem, and I want to build there. And honestly, we just follow them. So we follow the demand, and where people want to build, like, we are happy to go there. And we're super happy that Wormhole is kind of our partner that allows us to do that.
Awesome. I think I actually didn't know about your background at Circle. I think one of the things that I've been seeing recently, and I'm pretty sure all of you guys have different takes, or maybe the same take but in a different flavor, on this new meta that's popping up on the stable coins then building their own layer ones. Joe, I'm pretty sure you've thought a lot about this. Like, what do you think about this current meta? And then Dan, Rob, I'll throw it to you guys as well.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about there. I'll give my personal perspective. I don't want to speak on behalf of anybody, obviously. I think, and when we will touch on this, I think when we talk a little bit more about M0, but I think we have probably gone through the first phase of the stablecoin sector as far as like an approach to technology, right? And I think what we are bringing to the market is a much more sophisticated approach. I think we'll see way more sophisticated tech being built. And the time for like massive stablecoin issuance businesses is probably already in the past. I think, from here onwards, it's going to start to compress, and how interesting a business is just on the issuance side, it's a big question mark to me. So I think what you are seeing from Tether, from Circle, from Paxos, from everybody who has been in the issuance business for the last while is an attempt to diversify, right? They want to own more of the customer experience. They want to own vertically more of the stack, whether it's up or down. So I think from that perspective, they want to own like other ways of monetizing the services, right? That might be not just dependent on the float, but it might be dependent on transaction value and things like that. So I think that's if you think about it from that angle, it makes a lot of sense for people to start going up and down in the stack, as I said. And but again, it's very dynamic. I don't think anybody knows for sure how the sector is going to look like in 5 years and who's going to be winning. The main thing that we at M0 think about is that stablecoins are, as I said, they're amazing if you think about them as a developer platform, right? I think, again, the simplistic idea that all that you're holding is another token on your wallet, it's probably not the most valuable perspective. A lot of us, we come from fintech backgrounds, right? And having built attempts at good financial services experiences, typically the way that you have built that in the past is you find a partner bank, you find a partner payments processor. Those things are kind of the more static parts of your stack, right? It's how you store digital dollar value, how you move digital dollar value, and then you build kind of the cool thing, the cool application, the cool behavior on top of that. Stablecoins completely change all that, because you basically crush all of that into the one component that can live on chain with no intermediation, with a lot more permissionless models, where you can have the storage of the dollars on that component, you can have the transport of the dollars on that component, and you can have the behavior, right? I tell people, if you think about it, the Starbucks, the financial services side of a Starbucks app, it's a digital dollar that gets constrained, right? It's worth $1, but you can only spend on certain merchants. You can't transform it back into other form factors, right? I cannot withdraw, for example. And I don't get access to the yield that maybe they're making in the reserves, but I get a free coffee on my birthday. So you can describe that as additional and particular behaviors that digital dollar form factor has for that use case. I think if you then zoom out and say, okay, then let's let people build fintechs on top of stablecoins, because actually that's almost the entirety of the stack that they need, right? But then they need to be able to program behavior. You do realize then that the existing technology approaches that we have for the incumbent stablecoin products that we have are just not fit for purpose, because I cannot program USDC, I cannot program USDT, and it's none of their fault, but it's just the way that it was built. The only people who can program them is the people who have the keys. We don't think that's a good model. We think if you actually think that you can break a stablecoin into two separate components, one that is the value that belongs to the issuance side of the stack, but the behavior part, people should go nuts on the behavior. They should adapt that behavior for whatever use case they have. That belongs to the developers. That belongs to the people who are actually building the use case. And so that's effectively what M0 tries to do. We try to, put a platform, a tech platform in place that allows the developers to go and customize the behavior in whatever way they need for their use case, while being able to plug in to very robust kind of issuance players and have access to an interoperable layer across all these stablecoins that people can create.
Yeah. And Robbie, before you jump in, I know Thomas called it the pump fund of stablecoins, but I think the way that Joao described it, it's more like a developer equivalent of Pendle for stablecoins, where you have the yield part separate and you have the use case part separate. yeah, we'll probably start referencing that a lot more. Joe, I don't know if you saw this tweet, but Robinson, while at ETH New York, Robinson, talk us about the tweet, what you overheard in the urinal.
Oh, that was what we would call a shit post. But some say I did hear these things in the bathroom stall. We'll never know. But no, I mean, maybe just to kind of riff off what Joao was saying, I can't really say it much more eloquently than he did, but I think we're kind of over-indexing on these big moves. It just makes sense for these companies with a lot of resources to say, hey, where are the economic incentives moving? Should we buy it? Should we build it in-house? Like, what's the decision there? The first crack is usually going to be build it and learn, right? They can afford to fail. Like if they're going to launch a chain, to Joao's point, the issuance business, becomes a little less interesting over time. Yields or rates may compress. Mint redemption fees, let's say, isn't the best business either. So when you think about like, how do we capture more value? It's almost, just makes a lot of sense. We shouldn't be surprised that this is happening. And especially when you think about, maybe Stripe, for instance, right? They now have like a great B2B stack. You've got the chain, you've got Privy, then you've got Bridge. They have a ton of B2B customers already. Based on what exactly you need, you can integrate at any given part of the stack. And I think when we think about Circle as well, it's a good opportunity to, everyone's kind of like arguing what L1 versus L2. I will call out one thing. Circle's design is a POA, just a small shill to Wormhole. We decided to do POA 4 years ago plus. So we feel good about our design decisions back then, and now they're kind of becoming a little bit more practical and used today. But in general, I think it's the natural progression for these companies, and I don't think I think they're going to learn a lot. It could be the end game for a Stripe or Circle, but I think who knows if Arch or Tempo, just because they're big doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna, everything is gonna kind of migrate there. Dan, I'll let you jump in. I saw you on mute, but I wanted to add some thoughts too on M0 and Wormhole more broadly.
I was just going to clarify for anyone on the call who doesn't know what POA is. Proof of authority is how Wormhole operates. So we've got 19 validators who run the network. And if 13 of 19 of them agree on the validity of a message, they will kind of, verify that and allow it to move through, whether that's Pyth or Redstone Oracle data or value or stable coins moving across chains. And Robinson's point is that Circle chose the same method of proof of authority over other methods like proof of stake, etc., which is a good kind of signal for the choice that we made 4 or 5 years ago. Just a couple other things to add. I have seen there's definitely been a lot of conversation on Twitter around the positives and the negatives of launching these L1s. I think one of the main reasons I've seen people negative on these is just because having an L1 and having a stable coin on your own L1 naturally kind of progresses into DeFi, and to have a flourishing DeFi ecosystem, these chains will have the challenge of attracting all of the top tokens to their chain with deep liquidity and having it make sense for, an institutional trader or retail person coming to, I don't know, Circle's chain instead of being on Hyperliquid or being on ETH mainnet or Solana. So that'll be interesting to see if these stablecoin teams can tackle that. But the other thing I think I wanted to mention more broadly that we're seeing is this cycle is clearly the institutional cycle that we've been waiting on for 10 plus years. And the interesting thing is that the institutions are investing a lot in the Solana ecosystem and the Ethereum ecosystem, not because they're excited about those app ecosystems. It's mostly because they're excited about stablecoins. So stablecoins are bringing the banks and bringing the fintechs into crypto, and that will hopefully red pill them into going deeper into DEXs, into perps, etc. And then the last thing I was going to mention too on that note is that it'll be interesting, and maybe Joao or Robinson have more clarity on like the strategies of these teams, but it will be interesting to see if they do try to build up DeFi ecosystems. Joao was mentioning the fact that these teams are trying to kind of expand vertically and take over different parts of their stack and not have like might call it like supplier risk or something like that. But running their own chains, the other progression would be trying to compete with Hyperliquid. They're probably seeing the revenue that Hyperliquid's earning from a perp deck. So why can't Tether? Why can't a team building on M0 or USDC run their own perp decks and earn that revenue? So it'll be interesting to watch this over the next year.
The only thing I'll say, this is a good discussion, by the way. The only thing I'll say, I guess, maybe in addition to what you said, Dan, or counter to, I'll use Stripe in particular. I think Stripe and Circle may be a little bit different in this regard. I don't imagine Stripe is trying to build a vibrant, crypto native developer ecosystem. Stripe already has the clients, and I think they're trying to give their clients, just to speak, in broad strokes, a flavor of crypto, right? Whatever helps what their integrators need. And again, it's all about, they'll have that 3-stack layer, the Tempo, Privy, Bridge. Depending on where you're at and what you need, you just integrate directly with that. I can't, at least today, and I could easily be wrong on this as things play out, like, to me, that seems like their model of just kind of owning these parts and then offering that as a service offering. It's like blockchain tech as a service to these customers. Circle definitely could be different, but I'd imagine that's the Stripe play, at least today, and could mature over time.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating, like the times that we live in. Honestly, I don't think we could imagine, like, even last year, right, that we would be here in August 2025 and it would be like stablecoins would be such a big deal. I think we are really in like an arms race. I think everybody is really trying to shape the future in the way that it makes more sense for them and is more beneficial for them. But as you said, Robinson, it's really hard to try to predict anything. But we talk a lot to investors and to people who are building on stablecoins, and obviously especially since Genius, right? People are asking how is that going to change the ecosystem in the US or abroad, and banks coming to the fold, as Dan said, institutions coming into the fold, and I get asked a lot that question, right? Like what will happen when banks start issuing their stablecoin? And I have perfected my answer over time, and it's a bit of a BS way to answer, but I dodged the question by asking another question back, and I'm like, yeah, okay, fine, a bank can issue a stable coin, but are they going to build a Hyperliquid, right? Because I think the crux will still be on the use case, right? The crux will be like, what are people doing? What is interesting as far as a use case, as far as an application that demands stablecoin? Because that's literally a demand sink for everything that we have seen in stablecoins before, right? Whether it's holding $1 on a wallet in emerging markets for Tether, right, or DeFi for USDC, or what, pick your combination of use case and stablecoin. Like, you have seen that the more successful plays have been the ones that are intimately connected to use cases. And I actually think this means that it's the current scenario is very, very bullish for us, like crypto native teams that have been, sweating blood and tears for years on this, right? Because even when the institutions come on board, I think the things that are going to work the fastest will still have to do with applications that are very crypto native in the way that they are built, right? Maybe like from a facade, from the end user experience, it doesn't quite feel like it is a crypto native application. Certainly a much better UX than some of the crypto apps that we have today. But some of the best applications that we have seen are still things like centralized exchanges, perp dexes, like all of these things. I think we will get an injection of capital into those, but those are the ones that have been proven, and I think anybody who is working in stable coins for those types of applications are probably going to be in the pole position now.
Yeah, I think all of that makes sense. Just to sort of conclude all of this, and this is a pretty famous quote trail right now, I think what matters is where the users are, and that Wormhole can bridge. And with that note, Joao, I thank you so much for coming on to the ecosystem call.
Okay. So one quick thing, and I'm sorry to keep our time here, but I want to just like further drive for those listening, because I know we've got a lot of folks on. I want to kind of summarize at least maybe like how you as a user, obviously M0 provides a lot of benefit to the actual developer, but I want to maybe summarize why this relationship or this partnership between M0 and Wormhole is important, and from a user perspective. And sorry, Rachit, I know you're trying to keep run a show, and then we can move on. But I sometimes use these analogies, and they're somewhat loose. But and Joao probably remembers this too, obviously, his time at Circle. But we're coming out of an era. If you think about 4 years ago, when you looked at a given wallet, what you would see is obviously stablecoins were still very widely used, but you'd see 4 or 5 different versions of the same one. You'd see USDT, USDC, and you'd see all these like prefixes or suffixes of like .eth, .sol, .bnb, it could be not a chain, it could be something else. It's metadata. You can kind of put whatever you want there. And so it was just this really confusing user experience. And the way I will say it too, maybe if you're listening and you're not crypto native and you don't have a wallet, just think about opening your mobile banking app and looking at whatever your local currency is, and there being 4 different versions of that local currency, and they're almost like in separate accounts, right? And so it was this really this non-optimal experience. And I think what excites me, just so I know I can be long-winded, just to kind of like wrap up and bring this home, is like, obviously M0 provides a lot of infrastructure for the developer. But when it comes to the user, the end kind of product is you're going to see a lot of that liquidity fragmentation go away. NTT is a framework in which it's almost like an accounting system between the chains for these stable coins to maintain a native version no matter where they are. What does that mean? Whenever you open your wallet and look at a given stable coin on a chain, there's ideally only going to be one version of that. You don't have to worry about figuring out how to get the other version of the same thing, et cetera. And so as M0 launches more and more, obviously, stablecoins and works more and more with developers, Wormhole's there to kind of connect a lot of the stablecoins to all these different chains to make it truly multi-chain. I kind of see it as the end game a little bit in terms of like solving liquidity fragmentation. And that to me is one of the bigger things that is exciting about this relationship. And obviously we have a lot of stuff coming down the pipeline, not in 3, 6, 9 months, but like very, very soon that we're going to be announcing. That's exciting. But that all of that, this is the theme kind of tying throughout all of these things you'll see coming, and also some of the stuff that's already been announced with Noble, with Hyperliquid, and with some of these other stable coins and chains. So I just wanted to kind of tie a bow on why this is so exciting and why maybe those listening should be excited. It's gone are the days of having to deal with that suboptimal UX, and the more kind of net new stable coins we launch with this, the better experience a lot of users will have.
And can I make Rachit's life even harder? Can I plug in like just another 30 seconds to make it really concrete for people, right? What Robinson just said, and plug in like a few names of the partners that are building with us. We have let's just use for an example. Apologies for the ones that I'm going to omit, but we have the Cast team, which is like a stablecoin kind of neobank application, right? They're building on M0 on Solana in particular. And then we have Playtron, who's like a gaming operating system who wants to have their own stablecoin as well, who's going to build on M0, and they're particularly biased for the SUI ecosystem. Effectively, as Robinson said, like what you will see in the future is I hold a dollar balance on an app like Cast, and this depends on these companies also deciding to partner, but I could go to like a game and spend my dollar balance from my Cast wallet directly on that game. The way that things would work then is, through the M0, because both these stable coins are built on M0, through the M0 kind of tech platform, you could clear these stable coins at no price discovery, right? So effectively you transfer like value without leaving like any fees or any, there's no trading, that eats into that. And Wormhole plays the role of also, by the way, we need to move like value from one chain to another. So the combination of these two things, as Robinson said, will allow for effectively us having like a way better financial infrastructure than what we have today with banks and with all the messy rails. It doesn't mean like existing stablecoins are going to go away, but they get moved back into something that's just like an implementation detail behind the scenes.
Yes, sir. And I think having insight into the next couple of announcements we have together, like Joao, we're probably going to have you on next month as well, just to cover that one. But yeah, thanks so much for coming up. This has been awesome. This is Joao, Chief Strategy Officer at M0. Thanks so much for coming on, sir.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm gonna need to hop too. We've got something announcing tomorrow that I need to work on. So stay tuned for that. But thanks, Rachit, and see you guys
Thanks,
soon.
I'm staying. I'm locked in. Let's go.
Locked in. All right. Robinson, you know what's really interesting? I've been spending a lot of time, I went to Vietnam. I've been spending a lot of time in Korea, and we've been doing a lot of AMAs with creators in Korea. And the most common question I get asked is, how does NTT work? So I was really happy that you explained it earlier. I think that clip's going to do a lot, really well. We'll translate it. We'll have your voice in Korean and we'll try to amplify it in Korea, and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, as always, we're going to cover 4 things. We're also going to have Katya, our head of growth, come on and talk about her time in Cannes. We'll ask her about the Arbitrum and Robinhood announcement and her reactions to that. But yeah, in terms of the state of the internet economy that Wormhole has powered in July, it was around 1.6 billion. I do want to say there was one outlier that we did not factor into here. This volume is very similar to last month, if not more. Token transfer destinations have changed a little bit. Ethereum has creeped up to the top. Robinson, do you have any insights on, we saw Ethereum wasn't at the top last month and Ethereum sort of coming back. Is this like a growing signal of, the narrative of scaling the L1 is working, where people actually want to bridge back to Ethereum mainnet? I feel like as the centerpiece of all these ecosystems, we should have the most alpha, and that's something that our community would really value.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, despite a lot of the activity from all these different chains, Ethereum's still the dawn, if you will, when it comes to liquidity, right? People, if they transfer assets to another chain, they still hold assets on Ethereum. It is this kind of nation state. As much as I'll talk about the practicality around having less validators, like a Hyperliquid, like a Fogo, and things like that, there is something to be said about the necessity to have these blockchains that are, nation state level resistance when it comes to how decentralized and permissionless they are. And I think a lot of people, when they think about holding their assets somewhere, they still hold them on Ethereum. There's a reason the TVLs are so high. Yes, there's kind of the early market advantage and liquidity begets liquidity. But at the end of the day, a lot of people hold a lot of their assets on Ethereum. And then they'll move, and at least this is what some of the activity looks like. They'll move it to some other chains to maybe test some things out, take advantage of investments, open DeFi positions, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's kind of some of what, we continue to see. Of course, as Solana, does really well with meme coins, we see them take some of those assets from Ethereum and then go invest or try to make money on meme coins or whatever the activity is. We see a lot from Ethereum to Base, or from Solana, they'll maybe sometimes skip Ethereum and go to Base. But no, I think ETH is having a moment right now. No one can be surprised the token price is going up. And if there's one thing in crypto, token price is an attention monitor. And so a lot of attention is on Ethereum. So a lot of people are probably going to go back there. It has a robust DeFi ecosystem, right? We're seeing, we see Athena, Aave, Morpho, et cetera. So I think this Ethereum's just having a moment. And a lot of people still keep assets there, even over the past year or so, when it was, not the hottest chain under the sun, if you will.
Yeah, I think one ecosystem that's, not surprising considering the month we've had on crypto Twitter, but surprising in terms of the volume they've racked up, is Base. I think a lot of, I get a lot of DMs about this as well. How can I use Wormhole Portal to go to Base? I think Jesse and the team are doing a fantastic job when it comes to promoting the Base app and Sora and all these different things that you can do on Base. Is there anything that you're hearing in New York, Robinson, about the Base ecosystem that you want to talk about?
I'll say a couple of things. Number one, I know the Coinbase team is all together working on product this week and kind of really heads down. I always think initiatives like that are really good and great things come out of it. We've done similar things where we'll put moonshot projects on the board, take a week, and all of a sudden we've got the next thing we're building. It could be something like NTT, right, that comes out of a sprint like that. So I always love to hear teams kind of keeping that DNA. When it comes to Base in particular, I know there's a few things we're working on, obviously with them. I know Base app was obviously a big announcement. A lot of people wanted to bridge assets over and try that, right? So we saw a lot of stablecoin flows going over to Base to try Base app. So I just think right now they've got a lot of good activity. They've also around the base app. They also recently announced a lot of these kind of assets that they're starting to issue, on their own, right? We all know CBBTC, but they announced CBXRP, CBADA, CB Doge, trying to kind of like get those to flourish within the base ecosystem as well. So I just think they're doing a really good job at like building a good developer ecosystem, and some of the asset flows are kind of going over there to test some of those new applications. Nothing more notable that I know at this time, or things I can say at this time, but as we hop on next month's ecosystem call, maybe I'll have more to share.
Yeah, and one thing that I will say to everyone is, Robinson will always go into a group chat and ask a partner like, hey, which flavor of XRP do you like? I think that's really elegant, and that's something that I've picked on as well. Talking about flavors, let's talk about flavors of stablecoins. Robinson, I think one of the most asked questions for me whenever I go into like an AMA or a text AMA is, why are people like, what is the benefit of an integrator to integrate their stablecoin with NTT over other solutions? I think having a clip from you on this and that you talking to the community about this is really important. And then we can talk about stablecoin total volume as well.
Absolutely. So when it comes to NTT, I'll do a high level overview, and then I'll give you 2 reasons why using NTT is typically the best path for a lot of asset issuers. So the first thing, when it comes to what NTT is, so NTT is a multi-chain token standard or framework, right? So we have all of these different chains that are segmented, right? The liquidity segmented, and they have their own protocols in terms of like what a token is, the rules it has to follow, et cetera. So you're probably familiar with ERC20. You're probably familiar with an SPL token. On Cosmos, they have ICS20 tokens. These are all very different. And so NTT acts as this translation layer, or where Wormhole is just doing the accounting of making sure that whatever exists here, if you want to send it here, it's in a decentralized and a secure way that can happen, right? Your 10, whatever stablecoin of you have here, 10 on Ethereum as an ERC20 can now be an SPL on Solana. And so NTT just functions as this really secure multi-chain token standard, similar to how you think about ERC20 or SPL for all blockchains. And why should an asset issuer use NTT? So first, I'll say why in general, right? When we think about why you should have your token on multiple chains, so each chain has its own users and liquidity, right? So if you think about how a token can be successful, obviously there's the utility components and things like that, which NTT can help with, but also it's addressable market, right? If you want to get your token on more or people want to get their tokens on more exchanges because they want to get it in the hands of more people. NTT is the same thing, but for more blockchains, right? So you want to get your token in the hands of more users of SUI, more users of Solana, more users of Ethereum. You want the liquidity from those ecosystems flowing to your token, right? So it's a growth mechanism for your token on chain. That's what NTT is. That's kind of why you should do that. And then also when you think about utility, you're also able to have that token be live or used in the DeFi ecosystem on those chains. For instance, like if you were a token on Solana, but you wanted your token to be collateral on Athena, let's just say, or Morpho or something, you could use NTT to have your token now exist in a safe and secure way on that chain, and then take advantage of the utility that DeFi platform could bring your token, right? So that's more of so we have what is NTT, we have why in general I should do a multi-chain token standard. And then when it comes to just NTT specifically and Wormhole, there's 2 main things. Number one, security. So Wormhole is the best security mechanism in the space. This is why institutions like BlackRock, Apollo, Van Eck, Mercado Bitcoin, Hamilton Lane, Janus Henderson, I could go on. That's why they choose to use Wormhole as the kind of settlement between chains, is because our 19 Guardians is, I would say the best cross-chain attestation method at scale in crypto today. So the security is number one. If you're an asset issuer, you want to make sure your asset's secure. And then distribution is number 2, right? So we help with distribution. Wormhole has distribution in MetaMask. We have distribution in Backpack. We have distribution in Phantom. We have Portal, portalbridge.com, which we're going to put a lot more. If you actually go on it today, it's just come head over heels if you used it a year ago in terms of how much better a user experience it is. And we have some insane things coming for Portal and then before the end of the year. So I would say distribution is the other thing. You want to make sure as many people can transfer, touch, and use your asset as possible. And we give you that out of the box with NTT because it's integrated in all these wallets and applications.
Yeah, and just more context for our listeners and our community. You can actually check who these guardians are. These are some of the top validators companies in the space. Each have their own stellar reputation, and they essentially attest every entity transfer, essentially. Cool. All right. That was stablecoins. I was really hoping we'd have Dan on here and we'd sort of poke him on like, hey, what's the announcement for tomorrow? And we'd make him really awkward. But he left. So yeah, Dan Robinson, tell us about, talk to us about this facelift. I know in the past when we've gone to conferences, Portal has been like a main issue where users are telling us like, hey, this isn't working. Cody on the community team has been struck with messages as well. When we look at it internally, sentiment with Wormhole Portal has become astronomically different from what it was 1 year ago, where a lot of people are really, really happy with the product now. Can you talk to us about, from a high-level foundation perspective, what has changed and how was the team able to drive this change? Like, what was and again, this is like really new for me too, because I joined like 8 months ago, so I've never actually heard the story either. So this is new as well.
This is a good conversation, and I'll also describe like a broader crypto trend or industry trend and kind of tie it into Portal. So I think if you think about 4 years ago, the general like approach to attracting developers was build the infrastructure, they will come, and I think the third leg of that is they will be successful. I think we had a few of those that were successful. But I think a lot of them weren't, and a lot of them struggled in terms of like different applications and things like that. And so Wormhole, and at least at the beginning, our thought process was similar to an L1, right? It was like, we are infrastructure, we provide these tools, ecosystem programs, marketing, BD, support for builders to build on Wormhole. That is very similar to an L1. Think about Solana, Sui, etc. That being said, first thing I want to say is like that is still very much so alive and well, and we have a lot of different DeFi protocols, we have a lot of different oracles, etc., building with Wormhole today as core to their infrastructure. But as it pertains to bridging and transferring assets, we saw a lot of teams building on top of Wormhole for that. But what we wanted to do is, and what we felt more comfortable doing over time because the regulatory environment shifted, is we said, hey, at one point we didn't want Portal to compete with other developers that were coming in, right? If we're being honest. Also, it was a little bit of a regulatory arbitrage, right? We didn't want to own a front end that could get us in trouble. What does in trouble look like? It could look like you're operating an exchange, right? An unregulated exchange. So we didn't want to necessarily kind of do any of that, and we wanted to say if we're going to continue, if we build it, they will come. There's a lot of teams that have come, and this has been the case for L1s as well. But we said, you know what? Portal is so important. There's nothing that you can really touch when it comes to Wormhole, except like, of course, there's a lot of teams that build and use it, but we can kind of say, here is our flagship like application that you could touch, you can use, etc. And so in Portal for a long time, because we kind of neglected it as something we weren't gonna put a lot of work into, we suffered from a lot of bad feedback. And I'll be the first one to take that on, because we weren't actually prioritizing it as our own product. We were saying, we'll just kind of like put some stuff live here so people can use it, but we hope they use other front ends as well. Now what we're saying is it's extremely important to have a relationship with the user. It's extremely important to own a front end. And we want to make that experience as best as possible. Here's another example I'll give you in crypto that's similar to this process we just went through of like kind of like owning the application is Sui, right? So Sui is a blockchain, and I don't know their exact strategy. I don't want to speak for them. This is my observation. Sui is a blockchain where a lot of builders come and build on it, and they've had a lot of successful builders do that. I think Aftermath is a team we work closely with. I have a lot of respect for them, but they also incubated some teams, right? They incubated, I think it's DeepBook. They incubated Walrus. They know they're a good team. They know what it takes to build something great. And they went ahead and did that. And at the end of the day, the user has a better experience, right? Because they have this strong team that's built Sui, something they already use today, now going to build the application. It's very similar to Portal, right? We said, if we build it, they will come. We neglected Portal. Now we're saying, you know what? And we made the decision 6 months ago, we're going to make Portal one of the best user DeFi, not just bridging, DeFi application front ends in the space. And so I'm actually really excited because I come from a background in especially when I was years ago working at DoorDash of actually working on an application interface that millions and millions of people touched every single day. And then, so this is going to be kind of one of the new main priorities for Wormhole. And it's why you're seeing such a rapid clip of up facelifts when it comes to Portal. And it won't just be facelifts, right? We're going to have a lot of new products and features, et cetera. So hopefully that I didn't ramble too much and you kind of got the sentiment there. But originally, in summary, crypto wanted to be a build it and they will come. And I think there was over time, with a little bit of regulatory clarity and a little bit of like learning over time, that like, hey, the teams that built this infrastructure should also build kind of that first strong application that users use. And another example could be EigenLayer building EigenCloud or EigenDA, right? They're like, oh, we actually should build a strong example that gets a lot of usage and not just rely on other teams to come and build for our success.
Yeah. And I would say, like, having known tomorrow's announcement, I would say it's not a facelift. Like, this is like the Phoenix moment where it's like a rebirth for Portal. Yeah, I'm very, very, I think we should have planned this better and had this call tomorrow. I feel really bad about myself for having done that. But yeah, Robinson, I think that's a really good analogy of, this is probably like Wormhole's verticalization moment of like, hey, this is ours, like this is now Wormhole Portal. And with tomorrow's announcement, we'll have the Phoenix moment. And, we can probably do the animation as well, like, in Harry Potter where Dumbledore's like, and it sort of gets up into flames. Nilavo, if you're listening, we should make that animation for tomorrow. Cool. All right, Robinson, this is your favorite part of the deck. Let's talk about integrators and major highlights. I know I asked you this question yesterday as well, last time as well. Let's talk about all these integrations. I think talking about MoveUSD first, I was reading up on this when we were drafting the announcement. This is by CFX Labs, and this stablecoin is essentially in alignment with the Genius Act standards. Can you talk a little bit about, this team and what sort of their mission statement is? Oh, Robinson, you're on mute.
I'm on mute. Sorry, Rachit. Which team? Sorry, are you mentioning here?
MoveUSD, CFX Labs.
Yeah. I think so. I'll just maybe talk about it a little bit more broadly. I think for us, and we've talked about this a little bit before, is like we want to be able to be like the stablecoin settlement layer, which is I think an important thing to make clear. It's like any asset Wormhole can kind of move cross chain, but for those of you who don't know, we helped build Circle's CCTP, which is their centralized bridge. NTT, if you know what CCTP is, NTT is essentially any asset CCTP, right? So when we think of any asset, a lot of the assets that are doing a lot of the volume for Wormhole are stablecoins, right? And we had Joao on earlier. There's going to be more stablecoins. They literally have like a stablecoin as a service platform in some senses. And so MoveUSD is kind of the latest stablecoin, obviously, that we've been working with and bringing them back on. And we're really excited about this team. Obviously, their MoveUSD in general is early on, but we like to take bets on teams pretty early that we think are strong. And MoveUSD is just another example of that. But they're also just another kind of, I would say another good customer or good stablecoin on the march to just have as many as possible, and Wormhole kind of be that stablecoin settlement layer. So we're really excited, obviously, about that, and we think we'll see a lot more coming from them soon. As I mentioned, they're really getting up and running now.
Awesome. The next one I want to talk about is the Tokenized Asset Coalition. I think the reason why I'm focusing on these ones is because they're sort of out of the ordinary. And these are integrations or partnerships that people may have not heard of before. So it's a little harder for them to connect the dots. It is for me. I still struggle with the specifics. Can you talk to us a little bit about, Wormhole's involvement in the tech and what sort of things that what are we going to do through this?
Yeah. And so the way I think about and Rachit, I like to always take a step back on stuff like this is why are these things important? And I was actually at NextFin, the conference yesterday for ETH NYC, and the topic was unifying liquidity. which is obviously a very like broad term. We love these kind of like broad stroke things, but why that's important is, you know, obviously the more and more stable coins, and we had again Joao on earlier from M0 talking about this too. It's like standards are important, right? And so why are standard tokenized standards important is because you end up with a bunch of different versions of the same thing, right? So imagine when we think about RWAs coming on chain, which Tesla stock version do you trade with, right? Like, do you do the Z flavor, the Y flavor, the X flavor? Like, which one do you use? And also there's kind of this, at the same time, there's this like issue when it comes to permissionless versus permissioned assets. And, you know, especially like these assets need to be wrapped to be used in DeFi. You know, Securitize has the S wrapper, I think it is, for Apollo and Biddle, et cetera. And so this is, you know, a kind of like move to standardize some of the tokenization flavors, if you will, and kind of rally behind a few of them. And I actually think a lot about this like NTT as well, right? Like if everyone accepted one or two multi-chain token standards, all developers' lives would be easier. And if developers' lives are easier, the user ends up having a better experience, right? But now what they have to do, because there's so many standards, is like adopt all these different ones, make an aggregation of these different standards, figure out, you know, which rules and invariants to inherit, et cetera, right? So it becomes super complicated. And the annoying thing about crypto, if I'm being honest, is like there's always an economic incentive, right? So like we think about Swift is just this entity where, you know, 10,000 plus banks agreed to use, and it's great because they all have the same standard. In crypto, you have multiple standards because all these teams have tokens and they obviously want their standard to win. And so there's always this push and pull with economic incentives where, you know, I think this coalition, it means well. It's the idea is, you know, can we standardize some of these processes, make it easier for investors, make it easier for developers? And look, we're always going to try to win on the standard front, but we're also going to try to get behind things that make sense and help make everyone's experience on chain better.
Yeah. And I think that's super important. And I think that was an awesome clip. Thanks so much, Robinson, for explaining it to me so that I can explain it further as well. In the interest of time, I will cover the other partnerships a little bit briefly. You know, we saw Red go to Solana. We saw TBTC go to Sui. We saw Fogo testnet integration onto Portal. You know, go to portalbridge.com, try it out. And then we saw Centrifuge go to Ethereum, Plume, Base, Arbitrum, AVAX, and BNB. Interoperability exclusive with Wormhole. Next up, Robinson. I was really trying to get the Mento team on for this one, and I'm pretty sure we're going to have them on for next month. Ecosystem Call. Do you want to talk a little bit about why Mento's FX infrastructure is so important and how Wormhole is plugging into that? I think this is like this has been super hot in the community, especially in Indonesia, where they've been loving Mento a lot. I think hearing it from you directly would be super awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll start by saying, and I know we're almost at time here, so I apologize, I won't be too long, but why am I excited about this? Like, I get excited about, well, I think short term. I think at Wormhole we do a good job of thinking short term, but we do a really good job of thinking long term, because we're going to be around for, you know, protocols decentralized will be around for ideally ever, right? But I think when I think about you know, FX, it is such a huge market, and it is very similar to the market we're going after when it comes to cross-chain transactions, right? If you guys have been listening month over month or know a good bit about Wormhole, you know, we kind of view ourselves a little bit as like the Swift of crypto. But there's about $7.5 trillion of value that gets transferred every 24 hours. That's insane. That's insane. Probably, if I could guess, the 24-hour market today for crypto in terms of transfer volume, I would probably say it's around, I don't know, any given day, 400, 500 million, right? So we just have so far to go. And then I think about something like FX. It's so ideal that FX trading can happen on a place that, or on a technology that, you know, you can trade 24 hours a day. Latency is, you know, it's almost virtual instant settlement, right? Like these kind of like core tenets to crypto become like a lot, like very useful when it comes to FX. And I was doing some research with Marcus and the team over there, and you know, there's like, I think something to the similar vein of like 5 trillion in FX that turns over on a given 24-hour period. So bringing that on chain is really exciting. I think, however, if I'm intellectually honest, there's a few hurdles, right? Like number one, we have to figure out how to make non-US denominated stablecoins successful. I think that is a problem that, I hope the Mento team can solve. Obviously, we'll be here to help service, but I don't necessarily if I'm honest, have an answer of how we can do that. We haven't necessarily seen it today. But as that, like, I do think that will happen, right? I believe the whole financial system will come on chain. So there is going to be a moment where these things start to happen. As that happens, we need a good infrastructure to be able to trade in and out of these FX tokens. And you're going to want to be able to do it across all chains, and you're going to want to be able to do it with virtually no slippage. Because imagine, converting cash when you get to the airport, right? Something like that. And the fees you pay, the fees are going to be a lot less, right? Because if we can have deep liquidity, et cetera. So Mento's model, I like to think about it, and I'm, they're not going to love that I say it's similar like this, but it's similar to almost like a curve for a curve pool for almost any like FX asset, but they have a few innovations around how they handle the liquidity that helps, you have lower slippage with a lower depth of actual asset. And then so you're able to kind of like plug this infrastructure across all these different chains. And in the ideal world is you can settle between any FX asset at the lowest slippage possible, as fast as possible across any chain. And so I'm really excited. This is a team that's been building in the Celo ecosystem for a really long time. So they've got kind of some credibility. I think they do the most, by the way, some of the most transaction volume on Celo today, if not all,
yes,
like by far.
Yeah.
So good, solid team. And Wormhole is effectively going to be connecting all of these assets between the deployments, right? So if you have a stable coin, and I'm not talking US denominated, right? A different type of stable coin on one chain, you can easily transition or swap that to this, maybe the same one on a different chain, and then into another FX asset. So yeah, there's a good bit that needs to happen here, but this is the setup for making something I think that would be successful in bringing FX on chain.
That makes sense. FX ACC. It's like they're
ACC.
Another one of your favorites, Robinson, one that you have tweeted about at least 20 times in the last 1 month. Short history on your visit to their office, again, for the community.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, a lot of things. We were working on so many things, guys, and good things take time. I think is what I mentioned with this one. Anything good takes time. Things that get announced on Twitter likely have had 10 plus people putting in 50 plus hours, working across 6 months. And Hamilton Lane is one of those examples, right? So for those of you who aren't familiar, when it comes to RWAs today, a lot of the main use cases are like these big funds. So these big entities that invest a lot of money, hold a lot of assets. They are essentially issuing assets on chain. So we all know BlackRock. You probably know Apollo by now. Hamilton Lane is huge, right? I think they're one of the leading private credit funds, and I think they are close to ticking 1 trillion under management. And so this was obviously a long discussion. We've been working with the team for a while. I flew out to Zurich, did some workshop sessions with them, whatever it took to kind of get them to understand, help with the integration. And ultimately, it kind of finally came to fruition. They have a fund called Scope. Scope is a private credit fund. I think it yields about 8 to 9%. Usually with private credit, it takes about like $500,000 minimum investment. I think Scope is $10,000. So that's real innovation right there. We're able to reduce that barrier for people that want this type of investment. That's usually reserved for the high net worths only. And then we're connecting, obviously, and settling all their Scope assets between all the different chains. And so this is a huge win. This is just another notch on the belt for Wormhole, just really running away with the institutional market when it comes to like interoperability. Maybe I'll just shout out the Hamilton Lane team for being so open-minded. Victor, the head of digital assets over there, is just really passionate, I think, about democratizing finance. And really has a good understanding of crypto and how things can help and like what the real use cases and unlocks are, not as much the speculative stuff. So just been a really great pleasure, and excited to see this one come to fruition, and many more to come. This is one that was 6 months in the making. Now just imagine all the other cascading 6 months in the making deals to come.
Yeah. Funny story for the community. Someone in the Discord said that, you know, they were really bullish on this because they thought Lewis Hamilton came on chain, and then I had to explain to them, like, hey, you know, it's not that.
Well,
yeah.
if anyone in the community has a connection with Lewis Hamilton and he wants to come on chain,
Oh yeah, Robinson, we forgot to add Ball in here. We'll have that next month, don't worry.
Yeah,
We'll
I need a W thrown up from Hamilton next race.
Again. Yeah. Cool. All right, Robinson, that completes our hour. Thanks so much for doing this. We're gonna get a lot of clips out of this, of course. And yeah, community, we'll see you next month for another Wormhole Ecosystem Call.
Thanks for hosting, Rachit. See you, everyone.
See you, everyone. Bye.